Welcome to another episode of the Original Outdoors podcast. My name's Richard.
And I'm Amy.
And in this episode, we talk about an entire year of things. So I don't spend a huge amount of time on social media or other things, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts, mostly because that means I can do it whilst driving or walking or going to something else or doing another activity. And it seems that every other podcast I listen to at the moment is doing an end of the year review, which they obviously all recorded ahead of time back in early December.
Yeah. Rather
than the 30th of December, like we're recording for this one, because we only just thought about it and thought, hey, we should do a review of the year. So this is going to be an up-to-the-date one.
Authentic. Entire 12-month long one.
Minus a day.
Minus a day.
If something happens tomorrow, it won't be in the podcast. We were just looking back through, because you used to look back through photo albums and stuff like that, but really now it's Amazon Photos or whatever cloud-based backup you have for your photos from your phone.
Yeah.
I use that to find out what the hell I was doing on a particular day or on a particular month, and we were just flicking through now going, oh yeah, I forgot we did that, or oh yeah, we did that. And it strikes me that it's going to be difficult to do a review of things, because if I did a month-by-month breakdown, it would be lots of, oh yeah, and then we went to this repeat client and we're training this cohort of their staff in how not to die on a wind farm, or how to do this one particular outdoor skill because we're on a retainer with them and we're training their staff all year round. That's just going to get boring again and again.
Yeah.
And you don't want to hear that. So just mentally fill in, as a listener, in between all these things that we might be talking about, fill in, just assume we were doing boring things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it disappoints a lot of people when they sort of say, oh, so what have you been up to? It's like, mostly been sat in an office going through risk assessments, site safety plans, risk avoidance method statements for different people that work in the outdoors and different companies. There's a lot less climbing mountains than you'd imagine.
Yeah, there is. There's a weird thing when you have jobs that involve working outdoors, or in my previous roles of like working in wildlife conservation, where people think, oh, it's amazing, you must have so much fun, you get to see all these animals and everything, or do all these things and go up all these mountains and places. It's like, no, a surprisingly large amount of time is spent in the office.
Yes. There is the opposite to that, which is when we do get the busy periods when we're out on site. A lot of the time, even if on site is the side of a mountain or in a forest or down by a river somewhere, people who are coming to us as a business, or one of the other businesses related to this one, they're coming to you for your expertise gained from working in the outdoors and for you to do something that is working in the outdoors. Some people seem very surprised and a bit irate at times that you're not in the office constantly. I sent you this email this morning and it's now 5 p.m. and you haven't got back to me. It's like, yeah, I've been staring at a tree all day.
Just one.
Just one, yeah. So we'll pick out some of the highlights instead.
Yeah, I think that's better.
I was thinking about, should we do a month-by-month breakdown of things, but that kind of unraveled quickly. So
yep,
I called some things out.
Yeah.
And Amy made a list as we went along. So I think the first thing on there is probably would have been about this time last year, maybe even a bit earlier. Was contacted by a chap who is a freelance writer, and he writes different pieces for different magazines, and he was writing something for
BBC Travel, was it?
Something like that. Something BBC and something Travel. It did end up on their website. And you can go and find it. And I think the point of the article was basically, why is bushcraft so popular?
Yeah.
what's it about? Why is it so popular? Why is it still so popular?
Mm-hmm.
And so on. And he contacted me because he wanted to go and do a night in the woods with that vague thing of bushcraft stuff. And it's always difficult to sort of respond to those requests because they're often very vague. And it's based on their interpretations of what that thing is. And if your understanding of it doesn't match their interpretations, then they're not going to get what they want, or they're not going to get what they expect. For that, we just said, okay, you're going to go out with minimal equipment. You won't be sleeping in a tent. You won't be sleeping in a hammock.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be given a couple of plastic sheets, some string, some tea lights, and I think 5 matches or something like that.
Yeah.
And you have to have shelter and fire and live out for that period. Mm-hmm. We'll do other things. We'll talk about some foraging and wild food and sourcing water and just general campcraft. But you have to go out and do that. And then that was when the temperatures dropped down to about -8, -9 Celsius overnight.
Oh, it was cold.
It was cold. And this guy, he had good fun, I think. That's one way of putting it. He slept out under a lean-to that he made himself with a fire up against a big rock wall he was using as a heat reflector. He made sort of an impromptu fence as a windbreak. But most of the daylight hours were spent making this shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went off and finished that and then went off to do the rest of the article. I think he spoke to some other people. And looking back on it, I was not annoyed, but missed an opportunity, as I often do, or like misunderstood. I didn't think ahead to where this was going, because his photos of a pretty amateurish, because it was his first time, he was an amateur, which is shelter that wasn't really great. It looked a bit tatty, a little bit untidy. It did the job, but you'd only know that if you knew what job it was trying to achieve. If you're looking at it from scratch, if you're looking at it from as a complete outsider, complete novice, had no idea about that subject, you look at it and go, well, that doesn't look very good. And that photo of his shelter is the one that ended up in the article.
Yeah.
With my quotes on it. It's like, I wish I'd have made you a better shelter if I knew that was going to be in the article on the BBC website, but yeah.
I think the thing is, though, is that that was his experience of it as well. He did, like you say, that was his first time making a shelter, and I'm fairly sure it did credit that it was the shelter he had built.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
Sort of thing.
I gave him, it needs to do this, and this. And he made it. It wasn't make this shelter, this is the optimum way of doing it.
No.
Because sort of like failure was built into the task, which is often a good way of doing things as a training exercise, but not if it's going to be on a bloody article. So next time we do one of those, can someone remind me that this thing might end up in a Google search?
Noted.
With my name.
Yeah.
So there was that.
Mm-hmm.
And then just, January sort of like cold and fairly dry. Yeah.
I don't recall there being much else. Like, looking through your photos then, there wasn't anything else major going on then.
I had several nights out with work, as you can call it, in, what was that? Corinthia sleeping bag. I ended up picking up last year, which is too heavy to carry anywhere, really, or it's too big. It doesn't fit my criteria of a packable sleeping bag because it's like a small child.
Yeah.
But it is warm. God, it's warm.
It's comfortable. I've borrowed it a couple of times as well, and that's possibly the best sleeping bag ever. For if you're able to drive up to where you're camping or close enough, then it's great.
It's this, whatever their Arctic, I don't think it's their we'll put a link below. It's been in the podcast notes. And then on into February, which was normally quite a quiet month for us, work-wise.
Yeah.
We get on with a lot of the other things, like management of the woodlands that we use for the courses and getting on top of our obligations there. Yeah,
and catching up on some admin things or looking over websites and things like that. Coming up with things for the next year,
And planting stuff in the garden here. And it's getting ready for spring and all these things that are suddenly going to kick in.
Yeah, it's preparing for the busy period, really, isn't it? That's what goes on over the latter half of winter for us.
Yeah.
Although there was Birmingham.
Yeah, that was a weird one. That was that started off as a, hey, I'm somebody you used to work with doing previous things when I used to do film and TV stuff. I've got a friend who's working on a location at the moment in the Midlands, and she wants help with something. Can you help her? So, yeah, fine. Okay. And then she rang me, and then I spoke to her about it, and I have no idea if this thing's actually been broadcast yet, whether we can talk about it or not.
Well, as long as we don't mention the name of the thing or what it's about.
Yes, all right, fair enough.
That'll be all right.
It went from, can you advise us on how to do this thing, to, can you come and do this thing for us? Which is, when we say quick turnaround, I think it was like the day after, the next day or something. Or
Yeah,
2
it
days
was.
later.
It was.
Yeah,
It was really quick.
Come here and spend a fairly long day by the side of a canal towpath under the M6 at Birmingham.
Yep.
There was one bit where I think it was railway, canal, and motorway all meet in one place.
Yeah.
Or within 100 yards of each other.
Yeah.
And any one thing, you can get run over, you could fall in the canal and drown, you could get electrocuted by the high voltage cables buried just under the towpath, or fall onto the railway.
I think that about covers it, yeah. Yeah.
Or get run over by one of the vehicles on the set of this film.
Yes, one of the little, gator things going up and down.
Yeah, so I used to do film and TV safety in the outdoors of one type or another, and this one was a fairly simple thing. It was just basically protecting people walking up and down a slope.
A muddy slope.
A muddy slope.
A muddy slope, yeah.
So we created a handrail and put a fence in, basically, at short notice, and then manned it, and we were there until the early hours doing.
We were. It was quite, from my perspective, it was quite interesting because I've come into the business towards the end of working in that world.
Yeah.
Or towards the point where we don't do as much of that. So it was interesting for me being on set and interacting with people in that way, as it were, especially in the middle of Birmingham, or on the outskirts of Birmingham, where there were people there from all sorts of different places, but they're all from fairly urban areas. So to them, walking up a muddy slope isn't necessarily as every day as it is for the likes of us and some of our friends.
Yeah, film and TV.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, film and TV world is a very interesting one. Actually, photography tends to be more the other way, but film and TV is very diverse generally in almost every respect.
Yep.
Apart from being comfortable on muddy ground and rocks and awareness of the hazards of those things. Apart from people like location supervisors and location managers and the odd producer who realise their liability, and that's where we come in, or used to. You would get people who they had no suitable footwear for that ground at all, or wouldn't even think that I'm going to be on mud all day.
No,
I wear this or have a torch or any of these sort of things that we think of for going to the pub. So it was interesting for that, but the locations company that was doing the movement of people.
Yep. So
they had a fleet of gators, those side-by-side buggy things, with trailers that were moving people and equipment all the way up and down. And when we say equipment, it's tons and tons of equipment, huge generators, lights, tents, props, stunt equipment, loads of things. They just move it back and forth between these two different locations, two different sites. They were all mostly gamekeepers. Yeah,
they were, or they worked in that area, as it were.
Field sports sort of community, which we're attached to for wild food purposes, and that ended up with quite an interesting sort of parallel conversation where I'm fairly sure we were the only people there, apart from them, who shoot for food.
I think so,
or could have a conversation about it without being horrified about the idea, whilst tucking into their chicken curry that's provided by
the catering company.
Yeah.
And at which point I managed to disgrace myself by walking backwards and tripping over the hitch of one of the trailers.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah. I only just remembered that, and I can practically feel the bruise, even though it was February. No, not really.
It wasn't a cool moment, was it?
It was not a cool moment. I was surrounded by all these blokes who were talking about shooting, nodding along, because I'm like, yeah, I know bits. I know bits about this. I know bits about this. And then some vehicle had to come past, and we all moved out of the way, and I just ended up in a patch of brambles. Not my finest moment. But hey, highlights of the year, yeah?
Yeah, but it was good fun.
It was good fun.
It was nice to briefly return to that world. And it's not something we do a huge amount of now, as I keep saying, but it was a big part of my life in the few years running up to COVID and the big sort of change there. It was interesting to do it, but it's also interesting to be doing extreme wilderness location safety. And we were next to like the Deliveroo changeover point for drivers.
Yeah.
and under the M6. And
within spitting distance of several different transport links, you know?
Yeah, it's about as urban as you can get. And it was, and we were stood there in big boots and waterproofs and all sorts.
Yep.
So that was February.
Yep.
And what's next?
So in March, we were looking for a new location for doing some coastal foraging, weren't we?
I quite like March for going to the coast. We seem to have spent more time at the coast this year than other years in the last few. And I'm happy with that. I always like going to the coast, my home. But the March is that point where the water's still cold. It's holding a lot of oxygen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that's still there in fairly clear water as well.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
But apart from the odd storm, it can be quite calm as well. And you can get some good, clear, bright days that are still nice and cold. Some high pressure coming through, high pressure weather systems. And you're just starting to see those early spring coastal edibles starting to come about. Like seeing just the start of the marsh samphire appearing, just the start of the rock samphire.
Yeah.
But it's anything you do find is really fresh and succulent.
Yeah.
It's not that, it's quite good if you wash all the mud of the estuary off it kind of stuff that you find in June or July.
Yeah. No, March is still good because, like, say, cold water. I think the fact that there's storms rolling through means that you get some bigger fish staying a bit closer into the coast as well. Yeah. They don't want to be out in the open water as much, and you get some different things. Sometimes, sadly, you get things washing up on the beach that have become stranded because of storms. But we saw sea gooseberries, didn't we? I love seeing sea gooseberries. They're just so funky. Tiny
sort of globe-shaped jellyfish things.
Yeah. But you don't necessarily notice them until you're in the middle of a whole... They're not really shoals, but in the middle of a whole group of them.
No.
Realise you're surrounded.
And for that particular job, we spent as much time in the water as on the coast, on the land, snorkeling and looking for things. And it was, like you say, you're focusing on one thing or what you're looking through your mask, and then you look around and go, oh, there's those things. And then try and talk to the other person and realise they can't hear you. No. Or if one of you's above water, you can just about hear somebody talking through a snorkel.
Yeah, you can just about. Yeah. But we saw, did we see spider crab as well, scuttling around under there? There was a few different cool things.
Yeah, it was sort of the start of the spider crab activity as it was starting to come back in, but you get in localised pockets of warmer water.
Yeah.
So more activity in some places and those more sheltered areas, and then it's starting to come out. But there's more stuff with the coast, probably later on in the year.
Yeah, there is.
But March is another. March always seems to go quickly as well.
It does.
It's just like February blurs into March, and then spring starts, and we're starting to run the foraging courses and the wild food courses and the work there, and that just rolls right through then, almost into the middle of the summer.
Yeah, I mean, the next things that I've got, I think, are more summer-based, to be honest, because it's things like, I think the Temu order may have been the next thing.
Yeah, it just seemed like one day, every website I went to was advertising Temu, which I soon found out was like the new version of Wish or Alibaba or something. at ridiculously cheap prices. So I think one of the adverts came up with, and it was a man trap,
Yeah.
a sort of a leg hold trap. So
Mhm.
spring plate leg hold trap, the type that closes in from either side.
Yep.
I was looking at that going, no, nobody's going to send me a man trap in the post from China
No.
for less than £5 total.
No.
So
Never.
this is worth £5 to find out what they actually send me. Like, are they just going to send me a photo of a man trap printed on cardboard, or are they just going to take my money and run?
I had my money on the latter, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
So I created one of those like disposable fake card numbers that you can do with your banking app, and sent them my £5, and then they sent me a man trap.
Yeah.
In a week as well. It was quite quick.
It was.
The terrifying thing is, though, they sent me a man trap set, as in it was already laid out flat and sprung in position in the box, because that's how it goes flat.
I was going to say, I think the only reason I can imagine that you would do that is because that way it fits through a letterbox, basically.
But it was set, no warning on it. This box contains a live man trap that's set. So I opened the box and pulled it out and went, oh, Jesus! Because now I'm holding a live man trap on my...
Yeah. Thankfully, you didn't just pull it out of the box and fling it onto the floor, because that could have ended very badly.
No, and it's not. It hasn't got any serrated edges. It's just a smooth wire bar.
Yeah.
So it's not. You can't do anything with it, and that kind of traps you can't really use in the UK anymore anyway. And particularly not in Wales now, as the law changed this year. I still can't fathom why they're selling man traps for that price. I know it's just to try and get your details, and then they spam you with adverts, because I am being spammed with adverts for every outdoor piece of equipment you can imagine now, because I've obviously got a profile on there, but the man trap is hanging up on the wall in the shed, because I'm not sure what to do with it now.
I think that's where it will live forever. It's like not a cautionary tale, but just a did you know?
Yeah, but every time someone mentions Temu now in my earshot, it's like, they sent me a man trap. It was already set.
Yeah. So Temu, that was our adventure with Temu, and we have never bought anything since.
No.
So,
but if you want to buy a man trap, go and buy it, because they do work.
Yeah, I mean, it snapped shut when we put a stick in it. Actually, it did do quite a lot of damage to the broom handle that we tested it with first.
Yeah, that's true. There's a mark out the side of the broom handle still.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So no more Temu.
Okay, what else is on the list?
Pigs.
Oh, the pigs. So our friends Alistair and Laura, who have a small farm, they raise pigs every year or every couple of years. They do sheep farming, and they've got some chickens, but they're learning how to do pigs, basically, and how to do pigs where you raise them yourselves, you take them off to slaughter yourself, and they go into the food chain by selling directly to customer.
Yeah, it's small scale. They started with 5, and this year they had 12, so they've gone it up a little bit. But
and we got involved with this because we helped them with setting up the paddocks for it, and which was basically clearing woodland for it, and then some of the feeding, some of the management, and other things. And if you want to hear that as a blow-by-blow account, there's a episode on one of our partner podcasts, the Food Resilience Network, which by the time you're listening to this should either be just out or nearly out.
Yep, will be.
You can listen to that, me talking with Alistair about the whole thing, the whole pig affair. But through the middle part of this year, the pigs were a big part of that, because we were involved in it almost every week to one degree or another.
Yeah, we were.
So it was, and that working with food producers and working with securing our food supply and getting greater connected to our food supply has been a big part of how we live our lives now and what we do.
Yeah, we've been putting a lot of time into building more connections with our food sources and the people who produce the food, and just learning more about all of that as well. It's something that's of great importance to both of us, really. And
it's going to form a bigger part of what we do with Original Outdoors in the future. And that's why we've got that new podcast, the Food Resilience Network, which we started this year, and a few episodes into that. So you can go back and listen to that. That's all linked below.
And there's a lot more lined up with that as well. We've got more people to interview and talk to, including Hugh at Pentrevellin, who we've been doing some filming work with this year as well. That's been really fun, really interesting. It's been nice learning a bit more about what he does over at his farm there with his dairy and his beef. So I have on this list fishing.
Yeah, a lot of fishing time.
A lot of fishing happened this year. It was good. We've been doing some fly fishing.
Yeah, getting better at that.
Getting better at that. And then you've been out with crab boat stew several times as well over the year. This isn't kind of tied into any month, but yeah.
Crab boat stew, who still gets annoyed that I say crab boat stew because it is, as he points out, it's a lobster boat, not a crab boat that he has. Although I think he's just got a second one, or he's about to buy another boat.
Well, that's good.
So that'll make him crab fleet stew if he's got more than one boat.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's his boat, which is big enough to just get us into trouble, basically. But several attempts at going out. We've had not as much luck with the pots this year,
No.
but I think he spent as much time doing it. But the few times I've been out with him has been in the evenings, out to sunset, basically in the summer. So late tides, has to be just right with the tide. And we've had a few trips where it has been completely flat calm, as in it looks like a piece of glass out there.
I've seen the photos, that's why I'm saying yeah.
Spectacular sunsets as we do get, because on that bit of the North Wales coast, you've got, in the summer, the sun sets behind Anglesey and it reflects off all the mainland there, and these huge cliffs of the Great Ormond around Conway, into the estuary there. You've got the lights of the towns, there's the road coming in with the lights coming and the cars coming past there, and it is beautiful. It's just one of those things, photos never do these things justice, but there is just a feeling of being there doing it. And we had a few really sort of those trips that you'd be talking about to other anglers for years. It'd be, remember that one time. And there was the one where we were going out in search of mackerel.
Yeah.
And we got to just at the end of where you come out of Conway Marina. So the Conway Marina go out onto the river. There's a narrow channel that you've got to stay in, otherwise you'll end up beached on sandbanks. And it goes out quite a long way out into the sea, into the mouth of the estuary. And we got to just to the end of there, and there were 4 or 5 boats all moored up or just sat in the water. And we were just slowly motoring through them because obviously you could see people were fishing there. And someone on one of the boats just waved his arms and then just pointed repeatedly to the water all the way around him, going like, so look at the water. And then we did, and realised that it was just boiling with small bait fish, which were being pushed up by something else. And it was bass coming in, huge feeding of bass. So before Stu could even get the motor turned off, we just threw a lure in.
Yeah.
And I think it had been in the water less than 2 seconds, without exaggeration. I was like, okay, that's a bass on. Brought it in. Yeah, that's a huge bass. Okay, well, that's one. And then, okay, well, unhook it. He'll deal with that. I'll throw it out again. Boom, another one. Done.
Yeah.
So that was me. My quota caught. Because I generally, if it's above size, I will catch it, and I'll keep it.
Yeah.
I don't do sport fishing.
No.
If you do, fine. That's up to you. I'm not interested in sort of bring a fish out, throw it back, bring a fish out, throw it back. I'm out there for food. And that was me, my quota done in less than 15, 20 seconds of actual fishing time.
Yeah.
We went out after mackerel and things after that, but it was a really memorable evening, and Stu had a similar result when he got the fishing. And then went out another night where we were out after mackerel, and it was the same sort of thing. He sort of just dropped some feathers in and come back up with 7 or 8 mackerel.
Yeah, you did, didn't you? Yeah.
And just one after another, and then we go off to another spot and do that, and another spot and do that. Because it's like it has been for a lot of people. Since early 2020, life's been a bit stressful in one way or another, particularly if you run your own business and you're responsible for other people within that business. There were a couple of moments this year where I had brief periods of being completely in the moment, completely happy, not thinking about work, really, not thinking about client stuff, not thinking about other stresses, and just being completely zen-like is coming up to my mind, and that's not it. It's just, but it is a mindful process. It is being very, very, very much there in the moment, but still aware of your surroundings, and just being happy. And that moment was a good one.
Yeah.
And that's happened 2 or 3 times this year, and they've all been on boats of one type or another. But there's one particular bit, just a good 10-minute stretch of just motoring back in to the marina, to the mooring point. Stu's boat, me at the helm, because it's one of the rare times he lets me sail, and just pootling along, following the speed limit. Navigation lights are on the boat, but you can't see much around you at all, but you're navigating by the lights reflecting off everything else. And it was just
like a pure moment.
Yeah. I'm not describing it particularly well, but I almost need to take you with me to the next one. I go, right, feel this is it. This is what I was talking about in that podcast.
You painted a picture in my mind with what you were saying, but I have been there. So, but yeah, it is just that moment, that feeling of, just like you say, complete calm almost in your mind, but you're focused, but you're calm. It's almost like flow state type thing, but not quite. Being out in the woods and spending time out in the woods is often something that gets me into that sort of frame of mind. And we've had quite a lot of opportunities, quite a lot of times camping out in the woods this year with different groups of people, with clients, with friends, just on our own. And that's something that, particularly in the moments just before dawn, or when it might be dawn in summer because the sun rises early, but nobody else is awake yet. You realise that you're on your own, and you're just getting on with things, and you're comfortable in that surrounding, and
sort of the promise of a new day there as well.
Yeah.
Nothing's been ruined yet. Nothing's gone wrong yet. Nothing's fallen over.
No. But that moment where you've got up, you're ready for the day ahead. You're just starting to make your morning coffee and get yourself set up, and you've only got to think about you in that moment as well, because there's nobody else around to worry about.
Yeah.
And you can just focus on that, observe what's going on around you, listen to the birds and the noises, the wind in the trees, all of those things. Just absorb it.
That's kind of a weather dependent thing as well, that, isn't it? Because if it's going to be slatting it down with rain and wind, and everything is 10 times harder because of it.
Yeah.
You're dealing with those things. But if it's just, I can just sit here and this is fine. Everything's fine if I just sit here.
Yeah.
And just sit here with my coffee. The fire's going. I don't have to think about anything really until that fire needs work.
Yeah. Yeah, you can just enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Yeah. I mean, in the rain and things, and that moment of calm for me comes when you finally get into the tent or your shelter in your sleeping bag. You're warm, you're dry, and all you've got to do now is sleep. So I've really enjoyed that.
It's like that hierarchy of needs. The basic things are taken care of for that short period of time.
Yeah. So that's been where I've had that kind of feeling this year, I think, has been out in the woods. We've been to a few different events this year as well.
More than normal.
Yeah.
That has been the thing. It's that this 2023 has felt like the first proper post-COVID year.
Yes, it has. Yeah.
COVID and sort of as an illness seemed to bounce off both of us entirely. Didn't really affect us, but the lockdowns and all the other stuff around it really did
massively.
Yeah. Completely changed the nature of the business, can change the nature of our lives, and particularly as for here in Wales, where they were different lockdowns, stricter lockdowns, things like you couldn't leave the county or you couldn't enter that county.
Mm-hmm.
And that was even later on into 2020. That meant anything we had planned for the winter of 2020 and autumn and winter there got pushed into 2021, which meant we couldn't deliver things until 2021, and that we couldn't plan ahead, so we were still dealing with the after effects of that in 2022. 2023 was when it started to feel like it was back under our control. We weren't just responding to circumstances. And I suppose the events thing was part of that, because we were able to plan ahead for events, go to events.
Yeah, we were. And we were at some of them for work. And we were at some of them because they were local. It was nice. It was nice to be back out and talking to people from, how do I put this? Through work, we encounter people who obviously come from various parts of the UK and further afield, but it's different. At these events, we would be talking to people who we know, but we only see at those events. And having continuing conversations that we might have been having via WhatsApp or other messaging things or phone calls, and talking to them in person and developing some of these ideas further was really nice.
And some of these aren't planned. It's just you happen to be in the same physical space at the same time, and the odds of bumping into them are quite high. So you'd be walking in one direction and you'll meet someone walking in the other direction and go, oh, bloody hell, so-and-so.
Yeah.
And you'll stop and stand in the middle of the thoroughfare.
Yeah.
And talk about, and then someone else will drift past who one of you knows, and you'll say hello to them, and then you bring them into the conversation and you introduce them to them. And it's like that horrible networking thing, which I've never been particularly good at, but it's kind of organic networking, just this really disparate community from whichever world it's in are all there in the same place at the same time. So you can have their conversations instantly. You can't just tag somebody on Twitter or Instagram or whatever and say, and they might respond in a few days. This is, oh no, he's there. Yeah. She's there.
I need to ask him about that.
Yeah.
Or
I suppose the game fair was sort of the one that had most input into.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So we were working on the stand of a client of ours. So we were there for a couple of days doing that. And the game fair, I'll say for those outside the UK, but even in the UK, it's an outdoor, as in it's held outdoors. It's not in a big building somewhere, in the grounds of a big stately home. Kind of a festival, kind of a event, shopping, conference, weird hybrid fair. Lots of stalls, lots of arenas, lots of open things going on for hunting.
Yep.
In every form. So mostly to do with shooting.
Yep.
But also fishing.
Yep.
And land management.
And lots of that as well.
It's the sort of place where you can buy stuff from Yeti and get branded coolers and that sort of thing. You learn how to tie flies, and then you go to somewhere 100 meters away and be talking to somebody about ferrets. Go another 100 meters and talking to somebody who deals with antiques, and you can buy stuff from on the other side of the world, these fantastic antiques. We ended up buying a load of cutlery.
Yeah, we got quite a collection of that now. It's useful.
But then you go in the other direction, and then there's some there with tractors, and then there's logging equipment.
Oh, there was the chipper, which takes trunks which are kind of, I don't know, 3 feet across almost.
Oh yeah, a wood chipper. That's basically the size of a small house.
Yeah. Tiny homes were there.
Yeah.
Various different tiny homes, gin distillers.
Every flavour of alcohol, gin, chocolate, food, cheese,
ice cream,
luxury good.
Yeah.
Was there. So, but there's also on stage events, and Field Sports TV have their thing there, and you have everyone from government ministers through to chiefs of police, through to writers and ecologists and all sorts of people coming on there. There's like a debate stage, and over several of our listeners, that's not your thing at all. You might think of this as the worst possible place to go to, but if you ever do get the opportunity to go to something like that, I would say you should try it, because the way things are presented, the atmosphere, the reality of those things can often be very, very different to the preconceptions I sort of come across when I speak to people about those subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And everything from the demographics right through to the energy of the whole place.
Yeah.
Is very, very different to what you might expect of something like that.
It is. It is. I would say the atmosphere is one of the things that I love most about going there. The feeling of community that you get. Really nice. Everybody's just trying to buoy each other up. Everybody's trying to work together, really, to benefit.
I think in those kind of places as well, it's different to say an outdoor show like it's something at the NEC. Like it used to be the Ordnance Survey outdoor show years ago, and I think there's some version of that now. When I go to those kind of things, you don't get the feeling in sort of the tradition, the modern outdoors, mountain biking, kayaking, outdoor leisure kind of thing. You don't get the feeling that this is a fragile thing that might not be around forever, that might disappear.
No.
Whereas when you're anything to do with hunting, anything to do with hunting for food or hunting for sport or whatever your version of that is that you want to do, you do get the feeling that this is happening now, but it might not happen forever.
Yeah.
And that brings a different atmosphere as well.
Yeah, it does.
So it was interesting, and we went to the Welsh one as well. So that was a national game fair. Down in sort of...
So Ragley, it was.
Is that Warwickshire?
Yes. Yeah, Warwickshire.
Middle England.
Yeah.
I went to the Welsh one as well, which is over near Carnarvon.
Yes, it was this year. Yeah.
So as for the second year in running, I was invited to come and speak on stage, or sort of a conversation on stage. So I was a talking head, except the whole body was there.
Thankfully.
Talking again about outdoor access and the challenges of recreational outdoor access and what that brings and the opportunities it brings as well. So I was invited to come and speak at that.
Yeah, it was really interesting. You were talking with somebody from Snowdonia National Park.
National Trust.
National Trust, sorry. Yes, it was National Trust, but based in Snowdonia, that was it.
Yeah, one of the rangers for that.
Yeah, one of their rangers. It was a really interesting talk. Listening to both of you and the different experiences that you've had. And then there were some interesting questions from the audience as well. It was quite a lively chat, that one in the conversation tent.
It was, and it was...
yeah. And it continued afterwards as well, the talking, which was...
Yeah, again, any of those kind of opportunities for conversation I really do value, because things are often not as they seem, particularly when you compare it to a social media comment.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of things that somebody was asking, well, or made the supposition that, well, of course, this, and this. And I was able to say, no, not in my experience, actually. Complete opposite, because of this and this project we worked on here and this interesting thing here. So those kind of in-person events are great for that. And I'm glad we're back out doing them. Hopefully we'll be doing more of those next year.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. One of the other reasons that I like those events is going to the food and drink places within them and trying all the different things. We did mention there's like everything under the sun there, but there's often...
It's like a mini food festival, isn't it?
Yeah, there's like a mini food... It's normally kind of one end of it is where it's all concentrated. And there's things like cooking demonstrations, and there's different... Because they're game fairs, there's often different game that you can try, and things like jerky made out of different things. Richard takes a different spin on this.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to do this anymore, I've been told.
He tends to find a stall that is selling something that includes foraged ingredients, get into a nice conversation with them, and then ask them where it is that they get their foraged ingredients from.
you're misselling me. It's not like I go out actively trying to antagonize people. It's just
No.
it happens to come up in the conversation. My favourite ones are gin.
Yeah, because it's quite common with gin.
Yeah, and
really,
I often end up buying something from them. So I'm not directly above your head. I can see a bottle of the gin from the last one we talked to about this thing. But it's when they say it's a gin that's from a local area, a particular area, they say it's made from the botanicals, the plants of one particular area. They're all from within this local area, so they're all local to that place.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask this not because I'm trying to make a judgment. I'm trying to find out how much awareness there is of the laws around this thing and the ecology, and not because I'm saying, well, you've broken this law, so you should go straight to jail. So no, I don't really care. It doesn't harm anyone. But I'm really interested in just sort of how well understood those laws are, because it helps us when we're teaching people about it and when we're doing that kind of work. And for this one gin place, there's a good example of it. I said, oh, so where do you get your botanicals from? Oh, they're all from within such a radius of this one location.
Mm-hmm.
I say, oh, so do you just work with landowners then to get it, or how do you go through the licensing? Oh, no, we just go down the lanes and collect it from the hedgerows.
Yeah.
Oh. So how do you get around the 1968 Theft Act with that?
Yeah.
So at which point the guy's wife, who had been completely disinterested during the whole conversation and was reading a book in the background, slams her book shut, sits upright and goes, what? So the whole thing with this is that it is to pick wild plants in the UK, for commercial purposes, if you do not have the landowner's permission, it is theft.
Yeah.
Under the 1968 Theft Act. That's it. That's all it is. There are very few prosecutions under it. I might regret saying this. It's not something you really need to worry about that much. But it is there. And he was completely unaware of this. So he said, well, I've never heard of it. Well, I would have heard of that if that were true. I was like, no, it's 1968. I think it's section 17 point. And then I told him, look, I wouldn't worry about it. No. Now I've made you worry, but yeah.
But you don't need to.
I did feel bad about that one.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, but I did missell you slightly. You don't go around just trying to ruin people's day. It's just, like you say, it's an interesting exercise in gathering information, and
I'm less of a git than it appears.
Because we work with chefs and other people who do food using foraged ingredients, it's useful to know who else out there is doing the same and how they go about it. Because there was another one that we talked to. Basically, Richard went out, tried some gin from this stand, didn't have any money on him. So when he came back to where we were, he said to me, when you go wander around, get some gin from this guy. So I had conversations with him about foraging as well. And we ended up talking about, because I had more time, doing some forage training with them, with that particular company. So it's just all that kind of thing. It's not antagonistic. It's out of interest. It is
out of interest, but we, as Amy said, we do work with chefs and companies that use wild plants in their products, and the way we have to do it is we have to work within the law.
Yeah.
Often the people we're working with for that hadn't heard of that being a fact until we started working with them either. So it's not particularly well known.
No.
But it is quite funny sometimes.
It is quite funny sometimes. So there's only a few things left really on this list, because we're now kind of hit autumn with the events, with the highlights of the year, which are in amongst everything else. So Scotland.
Oh yeah. Little bit of work up in Scotland, and then sort of tagging onto the back of that was a trip with some friends out going to do some wild camping on Knoydart, and in the middle of nowhere. And then you can hear the most of the story of that on the Modern Outdoor Survival podcast.
Yeah.
Which is another partner podcast of ours. All these are in the links below. If you're listening to this one and you're not listening to the others, you really are missing out. So we had that.
Rendezvous, We had the first rendezvous.
Yeah, so this year we took the Discord group. So Discord, if you don't know, it's like a forum software.
Tis.
It's a forum hosting platform, and you have a server on there. You create your own, and you set that up for your community. So we had one for the Modern Outdoor Survival podcast for a few years.
We did.
As the Original Outdoors thing evolves and going into what it's going to become, and we're partway through that process now. We made some big changes in 2023 towards that. The Discord community is now the Original Outdoors community, and we've got a few hundred members on there now.
We do. Yeah.
Lively conversation every day. I mean, as I went to record this, there was a conversation on there about the best underbody treatment for their vehicles. Somebody was asking about waterproof fabrics and brands. There was a conversation about modern education systems and what's right for their kid.
Yeah.
And possibly my favourite of the lot, which is somebody posted a photo a few months ago of they were out on a walk and they saw a goat in an abandoned coal shed somewhere. And then it became that the photo of the goat does make it look like it should be on the cover of a heavy metal album.
Yeah.
And then someone else who is occasional guest on the Food Resilience Network podcast, he said that it would make a coal hole goat would make a great name for a beer. And he brews ales.
He does.
So he has now brewed our unofficial ale of the year, which is Coal Hole Goat.
Yeah.
And now he's not selling it because he's not selling any alcohol, but he is basically charging for shipping, and he will send people bottles of a very limited run of Coal Hole Goat, and we're getting some in a few weeks.
I don't think there's any left to claim, actually. It's a black IPA though. I'm looking forward to it.
It is, and it's that
he knows his stuff.
At the beginning of 2023, I would not have thought that by the end of it, we'd have our own beer.
No.
From a random conversation. And we had nothing to do with it. It was just, he got in touch and said, can I make a beer and give it to people? Like, yeah, crack on. I'm not going to say no to that. But that community thing has touched me. Oh, that sounds wrong. The community support of that and the way that community has grown and developed, both online and offline, has been a big part of our year. And it's a big chunk of what we're moving towards with this brand and with what we do as a business for this particular side of things. So the Original Outdoors community, you can go in and get involved now. There's links below, there's links on the website. Free to join. You don't have to give your real name. You can sign up with a pseudonym and get involved in the conversations there. It is something that we are very active within as well. And we spend more time on there than we do posting on the Original Outdoors Instagram or social media or anything. So
we do.
Part of that as well, we wanted to start doing regular, as in quarterly, meetups. So people could come from that community and come for a weekend in the woods, free of charge. I think the other thing we charged you was you'd come and help do some physical work in the woods, some management of the woodland of some type. We've had 2 of those now. So the last one was in December. It
was the coldest weekend in December.
Yes. The subjects ranged from everything from campfire cooking through to metal detecting, through to basic firearm safety, to woodland management, to a million other things. And these aren't instructional events, they are conversational events. They are peer learning and sharing events.
They are.
If we can teach you something and you want to learn it, we'll do that. If you have something to teach us, we'll do that. If you want to just sit there by the fire, you can do that. So I think the next one of those is in March.
It is in March, yes.
We're also starting to run these benchmark trips, which is a similar sort of thing, but instead of going off to sit by a campfire in a wood, we're going to climb a mountain or go and do a day doing something fairly physically demanding, but also demanding in terms of skills.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that tomorrow. Heading out with a couple of the people from that group. Heading out into 50-mile-an-hour winds, heavy rain, to go and climb a mountain called Bryn Ogfawr, which is Western Snowdonia. Born and raised. No.
No, that's the other one.
Yes, actually, it's Aurori. No, you can't say it's not
Eryri,
Snowdonia National
yes,
Park.
that's true.
It's Aurori.
Yeah.
Aurori. Yeah. Neither of us are Welsh. National Park, but it's a mountain there. It's not a very big one, but it is particularly rugged in terms of terrain and lack of footpath and things. So that's going to be good fun for navigation and just handling yourself in poor weather. So we're doing that tomorrow. So all the information for that is on the Discord server. So if any of that sounds interesting, go and join in.
So I'd say one of my highlights for this year was in autumn when we were running. Well, we did several mushroom courses because autumn is the best time to go out looking for mushrooms. It's the time when they tend to fruit the most for various different reasons, but we went to some fantastic locations for this. One in particular stands out because we came across so many different types of mushrooms because we went through a few habitats. We went through woodland, we went through grassland, and it was all old and undisturbed. It wasn't land that had been ploughed or turned or used for agriculture. So it was just epic. We saw amethyst deceivers, we saw massive parasols in the scores. We came across oyster mushrooms or oysterlings at least. It was just great.
Yeah. Every lots of different types of amanita, lots of sort of stem and cap fungi that we don't tend to get in North Wales either.
Yeah. And a few cool brackets like artist bracket and the saddle.
Yeah.
That was a weird looking mushroom that I've not come across before. I think it was called elf saddle, that one, but it was a white, really odd looking cap and stem fungi type thing, but it was, bizarre.
It's that strange thing of you're not going to be able to remember every single mushroom in the UK off the top of your head and be able to identify it without going to a guidebook, without going to some external identification resource. And that's the whole point of the training that we do for that kind of thing, is teaching people how to do the identification process, not how to remember 10,000 species off by heart. But when we go to other places, other corners, it's great to see those things that we very rarely see here in North Wales. We see the stuff that's right for our climate, our soil, the overall environments here, the trees that we get here dictate what mushrooms we have here. But when just driving out into the middle of England or into southern England, we see completely different things.
We do, and it just makes it's always fantastic going out and looking for different mushrooms around here anyway. And every year I come across something that I've not seen in that location before, because not every species will fruit every single year. But yeah, like you say, going to a different location and coming across things that we just don't have around here, it adds a little bit more to that fire of enthusiasm for the subject.
It is. It brings in new challenges. I find it easy to get complacent about if we keep going back to the same places again and again. We know the areas we go to here very, very well in terms of foraging, in terms of ecology, in terms of the landscape and navigation and everything else. It's nice to be challenged again in new environments.
It is.
And go somewhere for the first time.
Yeah. And it really it flexes your brain a bit more, doesn't it?
It does.
It's good. It's good. So that was probably my main highlight. Do you have anything left that you want to talk about?
Nobody else wants to listen to anything else that we happened throughout the year. It's just the only thing that remains to say now is thank you particularly to our patrons for all the podcasts that we produce, at least for this side of the business, because they will have been listening to this first.
They will
have got this year, and that's what they pay for, and they pay to support the show and make it not worthwhile, but it covers some of the costs. Because every time we're editing or recording these, we're not doing something else, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And this, we want to keep doing this, so that makes it viable. So thank you to our patrons. Thank you
Thank
to
you
people who
very much.
supported us, and everyone else who supported us, whether it's the landowners that we work with, whether it's the other organizations that we partner with, and our other clients, and our wider network of supporters and friends. You all know who you are. If I haven't said thank you to you in person recently, then I'm saying it now. And it is, again, it's that community-based thing where I would like to think that we add value to people's lives in what we do, whether it's just our neighbors here, or people we see on a day-to-day basis or work with, or our clients or our friends. And that's an aim of mine, to always try and add value, be valuable, not to be a net benefit rather than a net deficit.
Drain.
I want to bring stuff in rather than take stuff away.
Definitely.
And I notice that with who we spend more time with as well, because that seems to be what they do.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you to those people that do that for us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Really do. Having that support and knowing that people out there are enjoying what we produce and getting something out of it is the reason for doing it at the end of the day.
So thank you. Thank you for your patience as well, because we haven't been as fast in getting stuff out this year as we hope to. Again, part of that, though, has been when we do stuff, we want it to be right. We don't want to do false starts. We don't want to do things and have to change directions. So if there has been a delay, there's normally been a good reason for it, but it's still a delay. Keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah.
We're not doing a coffee, though, or t-shirts. We might be doing t-shirts.
We might be doing t-shirts, but we're not doing a coffee.
Yet.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.